Welcome to the Expire Show, brought to you by Science Centre Singapore, Singapore Institute of Technology, and Neo Aeronautics. Well, in this series, we are going to bring you a variety of guest speakers. The guests include technopreneurs, president of societies, directors of listed board on NASDAQ and SGX. So there will be diversity in our guests in these studios. To kick off the September series, we have Mr. Shamir Rahim, and he's a famous guy. He sits on the CPF board, was the president of the Malay Chamber of Commerce, and I know him when he first started off, just starting out a company. And over the years, he has progressed to be like 40, under 40. I will never qualify for that. I'm like, okay, more than 50. But you have the chance. Let's listen to Shamir, how he do this. Hi, Shamir.
Hi,
Great to have you on the studio and on the show. Yes. So,
thank you.
This is your full accolades. Let's see, 2019, 2017, yeah, just lots of it. So you can find it on his LinkedIn, you can find it everywhere on his website, so I will not go into the details. But we want to spend a precious time with Shamir to let him talk about his journey, research, innovation, and enterprise, and then for interaction. So, let's go.
Thank you so much, Prof, for having me here. Hello to everyone as well. I was particularly impressed with the space and here, so hats off. Yeah. So I'll just spend about maybe 10 minutes talking about what my company we've built does, and I understand there'll be questions after that, so let's go into it. Yeah. So Versafleet, right? So we are a enterprise software as a service product in what we call the TMS product category. I'll explain what this means, right? But maybe before that, a bit about my background. So yes, I started life as a molecular biologist. This was in the National Day message some years ago. So PM Lee was kind enough to actually mention me. Actually, that year he mentioned Joseph Schooling as well. So I was like, why am I even mentioned in the same breath?
You're the same as a gold medalist.
I know, right? So, oh yeah, I was very honored to have that, right? So maybe as proof of whether, how molecular biologist I was. So this was my honours research in NUS. I was part of the second batch of the Combined Life Sciences program. So that program has been talked about a lot, actually recently with PM Lee talking about Mr. Philip Yeo launching the Biomedical Initiative. So I was one of the, impressionable youths to jump into that bandwagon.
We call it pioneers.
Pioneers.
You either go or you go the other way.
I know, yeah. Sounds better than being suckered in, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so yeah, this was us in the lab days. And yeah, I used to have this picture on LinkedIn, and it was actually me learning how to install a heart valve in a heart. Okay, so there's not a human heart, it's actually a pig's heart. So we were learning how to install this. Yeah. And of course, much later on, I made the switch from science to engineering. So this was my master's thesis. So we're working on like supply chain optimization. So we talk about supply chain resilience, and so this is if anyone recognizes this is a Bellman equation relating to dynamic programming. So we actually use some of these algorithms in our day-to-day work. Yeah. Okay, so this is a video explaining what we do.
Wow, so easy. Online shopping is really leh. When you're online shopping for yourself or for your business, come from many countries, all can be delivered to Singapore quickly. So how this group come to your doorstep so fast? It's okay. Let's go find out. Very serious. Hello, boss. Hey, how are you?
Good.
How did this digital technology help your business?
Previously, we got to manually write down all the delivery and tell them, tomorrow got to do what. After we implement Versafleet, straight away drivers can look at the handphone, then they know what jobs they have tomorrow morning already. So they don't have to come back to office anymore. And with that, we also increase certain revenue.
How many percent?
About 20 to 30%.
Sure, happy?
Happy.
Hello, bro.
Hello.
How are you?
Last time I have to bring many file. I need to check every file and then address. I find my directory and then I go. Now I just take my phone and then I click. The GPS will be come out. I straight away I can go directly.
So last time without digital technology, how many location you go?
4 or 5 location.
Now,
8 or 9 location.
wow, almost 100%.
Yeah,
Very effective.
more helpful.
Hello.
You allow us to monitor our drivers, our goods exactly where they are so that we can have real-time information on all our vehicles.
Oh, so y'all can anytime check your driver got 假座 or not lah.
Most importantly is work-related.
So did you take any course to upgrade your skills?
A basic skill will just to know how to operate the system. It's quite easy because commonly nowadays most of us now know how to use smartphone.
Oh, so which is mean I also can go for the course.
Can.
You have any your business future plan?
We are now trying to convert our competitors into partners. With the visibility that we all share on a single platform, we are able to optimize further all our vehicles.
Wow, you really 大方, you know. Turn your competitors to your business partner. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you see, digitalization is transforming Singapore economy. Employer and workers can benefit from going digital. So it's win-win situation, right?
Yeah, so this was actually produced some years ago by Rahim. It was to promote the whole digitalization of Singapore's economy. Yeah, so actually it's a good way to encapsulate the 3 key users we address. Right? So why did I start Versafleet? So back in 2012, right, there was a lot of focus on drones, robots, self-operating forklifts and the like. The irony I saw was that the plans were still being done by on pen and paper, which is ridiculous. You know, how do you tell a robot with a pen and paper what to do, right? So that informational aspect of logistics wasn't being automated. So this is why we started Versafleet, right? And I mean, these core values really relate to how our first user base were all drivers, like the gentleman you saw just now. So it was a very hard lesson we learned, because you can have all the fancy technology, but if it doesn't work for the lowest common denominator, right, the thing doesn't work, right? So today we have it in like 8 different languages. So it's available in Tagalog, in Bahasa, Simplified Chinese, all the languages. Yep. Okay, so this is the wall of logos. Okay, I won't go through all of it, but you might recognize some like FairPrice Online. So if yourself or maybe your family members order anything from FairPrice Online, that was optimized by Versafleet. Okay? So I must qualify, we are not responsible for whether the thing come on time or not. Okay, we optimize the route. They have their transporters that will actually do the deliveries.
So you're doing the software.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Yep. And I'll show you a bit more. It's actually quite unique how they do it. Yeah. So a bit about the journey. I got to see in the spirit of research, innovation, enterprise, right? We were supported in a critical way by a National Research Foundation. So this was a technology incubation scheme back in 2014. So it really helped us essentially codify the algorithms into a modern stack. Right? And since then we've launched, so the product has been in the market like 7-8 years now. And most recently, you might recognize SMRT. SMRT Ventures actually invested in Versafleet. We didn't do a press release, but it is semi-public.
So you get to see Xiao Moment.
Not personally. Yeah, but it was under Mr. Neo Kian Hong when he was the
CEO.
That's right.
Then CEO.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, we do a lot of work together actually now. Okay, so the part that Versafleet optimizes is what we call the last mile, right? So supply chain can be boiled down to very simple things. The first mile is how do you assemble the goods, right? So you take from the crops, then you make it to the finished product. The middle mile is the port-to-port movement, so it could be airport, seaport, or rail, or land. And then the last mile is what we sometimes call the inland distribution, so from a regional distribution center, RDC, to the stores and sometimes to the e-commerce. So this is the part that we optimize. Right? So the reason why they can't use the software that they already have is because the licenses are expensive. So they use SAP all that, right? They won't let the transporter use that SAP license. So the poor transporters live in this world, they get hundreds of calls a day, like the driver coming or not, right? So we automate all of this for them. Yeah, so I won't go through in detail, but this is Mr. Jason just now you saw. He uses this part as a controller. Then I think the gentleman, Mr. Garnison, I think, he uses this part. So as the driver, they will receive the orders, they will scan, take pictures. You can see we have updated the user interface a lot since, right? And it creates what we call the electronic proof of delivery, which is a very important legal document because this is what they need to get paid, right? And of course, the end recipient, you can actually track in a live location, where is this item, where is it going? Yeah, so some of the case studies, as promised, I won't go through all of it, but maybe just on FairPrice Online. So this is a very interesting case study in supply chain. Some of you might know FairPrice Online's main DC is somewhere in Joo Koon, but instead of doing the e-commerce deliveries from Joo Koon, they actually fulfill it from the retail store. So they initially started from what they call a dark store at Orchid Country Club. It's a dark store because you can't actually shop there. They switch off the lights. So it's only for the online team to basically do pick and pack. So they converted the retail store into a warehouse, right? So if you go to this FairPrice Online stores, like say at Vivo City or Kallang, you might see some people in the blue vest, then they pick, and then they suddenly disappear at the back, right? So they're not shoplifting, they're part of the online team. So instead of going through the checkout counter, they go to the back, and then this is where they will do the distribution to the thing. So this is sometimes what we call the hub and spoke model.
I see.
So this is how they manage to scale. I think when we were talking to them, they were doing maybe 5,000 orders a day. They're doing now about 12,000, 15,000 orders a day. So, and it's a competitive space. I mean, there's like Redmart and Sheng and all. So I think we're doing pretty well. Similarly for Watsons in Malaysia, this is about restocking their 500, almost 600 stores now in Peninsular Malaysia. So we actually deployed this during the lockdown. They call it a movement control order. So very interesting. The planners used to come to the office, plan on paper, map on the wall. But because they had to do the split team shift, using Versafleet, they could actually plan remotely. So they actually managed to do that as per normal. This is in Indonesia. So there's a brand called Bimoli, taking on. It's something like our knife brand. So this is about restocking the modern trade, retail trade. So this is a SAP site. So this gentleman in the middle. Yeah, so this gentleman in the middle, it was his first time, I'm told, holding a smartphone. Yeah, so digital adoption penetration isn't 100% in ASEAN. In Singapore, I think average is 1.5 phones per user but in Indonesia it's still not 100% adoption. Yeah, so this was quite interesting. Kara is another interesting brand. You might see this in your kitchen, your mom or family, or you might cook with it, coconut cream. So they've been doing phenomenally well during COVID. I think a lot of people were cooking. So their things were flying off the shelves.
Lots of cakes.
Yeah, cakes, even like curry and lontong and all, So when we deployed, they had one distribution center. Now they have about 5 warehouses in Malaysia. This is something we did during COVID, part of a CSR initiative. During our lockdown, right, we realized that there were some families facing, you could almost say, food security issues, right? Because we were all forced to stay at home. So basically what we did is we worked with MUIS and some of the mosques to distribute 20,000 food packets a day.
Yeah.
So this was a massive operation. I think we put together almost $2 million donations to do it. And of course it had to be optimized, the movement. So we volunteered our software to do to be the command center for that. This is at NUH.
Yeah, I wake up 3 a.m. in the night to go and collect the food in order to deliver to the workers' dorm at about 6 or 5.
As a volunteer?
Yeah, I was wondering like 2 o'clock. Then they collect their breakfast. It's like so long.
Yeah. And we had to get it within, I think, 4 hours, like the safe to consume time. Yeah. So that was cool. And of course, since we've launched features like contactless delivery, okay, so this, I won't go through every detail. Sometimes people wonder, optimization so hard, man? I thought Google Map turn by turn. Not same, okay? Turn by turn navigation, yes, you know, we no longer use TomTom or Garmin, we just use our phone, right? That's different. That is really routing for a single user.
Yeah.
When we talk about the vehicle routing problem, it's routing for more than one user. It could be, like for example, FairPrice Online is about 120 drivers. For Watsons in Malaysia, is almost 200 driver users. So when we are optimizing at that scale, it's not a turn-by-turn problem. It's really a VRP problem. And those in com science might know this is a intractable problem, what we call an NP hard thing. So as a comparison, right, chess is actually a simpler problem to solve than this, right? I won't go into the details.
So you think you can go and beat the chess master?
It's a different kind of solver.
Okay.
It's a different kind of solver, yeah. So actually chess doesn't use the minimax algorithm anymore. They use machine learning models like Stockfish, AlphaZero. In VRP, ML models are not really as reliable, so we still use algorithmic-based approaches. This is some visualization. Okay, this is a project we did with AI Singapore. Actually, Sydney is in AISG now. He was one of what they call AI apprentices, so he was learning about AI. He actually switched from HR to this, and doing pretty well. Yeah. So this is so we've been publishing papers together with School of Computing on this, and pretty much wraps up.
Okay, very good. So now we have a good understanding of his software is not Google Map, okay? It's much more sophisticated in algorithm and in complex environment. Now, okay, you can get your questions coming. In the meantime, we will spend some time talking about your journey, right? So I like to put it in a simple to easy format, such as from research to innovation to the enterprise. All right, let's start from research, right? So you start researching all this algorithm and then how is it? I mean, it's academic research, right? How do you relate to the real world when you do your research? Is it like, okay, I'm just for publishing paper, get my degree, or during research you actually talk to the real companies that are doing this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So the approach I took was, I actually didn't realize it was such a big problem or that it was this complex. So those of you who might know me, my family business actually is in logistics. So what happened was my dad asked me like, hey, Shamir, you know computers, software, can you help my 5 general managers plan faster, right? I said, what are they planning? Why are they taking so long? He said, yeah, they each take 2 to 4 hours a day planning the routes for their drivers. So this is a GM in Penang, in Malaysia, Johor, Singapore. So I was like, so I sat down with them. I went to their offices. What are they doing, right? So they were using like pivot tables. They were making all these considerations. Basically the constraints here, right? So each truck must be visited once and all that. So I thought like, okay, how hard can it be? So I used like a greedy algorithm. So I thought it should be fine. Turned out it wasn't. It was really not optimal. And then I did more research. I did literature review. I said, is this problem really that hard? And then when I really went into it, I was like, oh my God, yes. Papers have been published since the 1960s about this stuff, you know. And that's when I realized that, okay, I got to take this really seriously. Then I really went deep. And basically what I did was I took some of the algorithms, coded in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then I put it on a modern computing stack. So like parallel hyperthreading, parallel processing, and instead of taking like days and weeks to compute, I can now compute it within seconds. Yeah, so that was really the innovation. And from an enterprise point of view, because these things were classically done by the big routing giants, they would charge hundreds of thousands to millions to optimize. to solve completely. Then I realized actually the drivers don't need optimal solution. They just need something to get them out the door. So I basically took 10% of that capability and again solve it quicker and innovated it into a software as a service model. That's how we went to market with it. Yeah.
Okay, pretty good. So so now we won't go into your research, right? Then it will be too complex for us. So you have your research results, right? And there are 3 paths that you can go, right? One is continue to research, and that's PhD, right? Second is when work, I mean, since you are expert in this, you can work for IBM or the big companies or whatever. And the third is set up your own company.
Yep.
Why the choice of setting up your own company?
Yeah, good question. I also don't know whether I regret. So actually, a bit of background. Before I did this, I was working in multinationals. So I was working in Sanofi, I was working in Electronic. So like making the big bucks lah. You know? And actually that would be an easier life and a very straightforward path. And they pay well, right? I mean, pharma, medtech, it's evergreen, right? I think a few things. So one was I guess a lot of parents' pressure, like, because they're all business people, they say like, why are you not doing this as your own company, right? So it's a bit unusual, you know, most, like hashtag Asian parents are like, hey, you know, go do law or some medicine or something. So I was quite blessed to do that, to have that background, the social support. And also part of the NUS Overseas College program, you know, where we spend 1 year overseas. So that really kind of, you know, brainwash us into entrepreneurial first, be an entrepreneur first. So I guess combined, it seemed like a natural thing to do. So that's how I ended up doing it as a business.
I see. Okay. So when you start and this company, you have the technology, right? So you are commercializing your research.
Yep.
Then the first thing is, how do you start? You got to fund yourself, right? So where does the money come from? From friends or families?
Yeah, actually, truth be told, I asked my mom for my seed fund. So like, okay, here's 30 grand. And it was just nice because there was this thing called the A Startup Grant, where they did this matching, right? So that 30 grand unlocked another 50,000. Then suddenly I had enough for my first hire.
The government gave you a push.
Yes. So I'm quite a fortunate beneficiary of the system. The system works, right? And then after that was really about, so that was enough for like one full-time hire to really find a way to commercialize this. And then that seed round I mentioned with National Research Foundation, it was about 600,000. It was enough to grow a team of about 5 engineers, thereabouts. Back then, software engineer salaries were still okay. No, not okay.
Now it's like,
cannot afford. And we actually had the first 10 customers write us a check. So they actually paid for the software, like a deposit. So I did up like, what we call a smoke MVP, minimum viable product. So it's clickable. Now we use like Figma prototypes, XD prototypes, is the equivalent of that in 2012. So I showed them, you know, if you give me 10% of the contract, right, this is what you get. Then they click, then they. So now we call it user experience research, like UX, you know, UI, testing. Back then it was really about, to me, it was very logical, right? If I were to build this, would people pay, right? So I showed them a mock-up of the finished software product. They said, yeah, that's kind of what I want. And here's a check. So we were funded in this way by the customers and all. Something like a Kickstarter campaign.
It's like a crowdfunding campaign from your customers.
That's right.
Okay, you mentioned one word, and I think our audience probably need to understand this word, right? What is MVP?
Okay. So minimum viable product, not most valuable player. It's not the basketball term. So an MVP is basically, you know, like a bare bones version of the first product that, number one, serves the functionality that addresses the problem that you imagine your users have. It's not meant to look good, it's not meant to scale. It's usually stuck together with like scotch tape and crappy code. That's an MVP, right? So you should always be embarrassed by your MVP. If you're proud of it, means you launched too late, right? So that's, I mean, the classical understanding of an MVP.
That's a very interesting. It goes against conventional understanding, right? Where you say launch too late means a perfect product. So we don't launch perfect product. We launch a crappy product.
That's right. Beta version.
Beta version. It's not
Pre-alpha.
crappy, but it's useful, but minimal features.
Correct.
Just nice.
Buggy, yeah.
Buggy. And software you call buggy. Okay,
Yes.
okay, sure. All right. So from that, right? So you get your customers, you get your funding,
Yep.
and then you have from an MVP get a good products and so how you manage growth? Growth like what 300%?
Oh yeah. Wow, tough. I guess there are a couple of ways to go about it. So this is where we sometimes talk about business model innovation, right?
Okay.
How do you go to market, right? So in my case, right, the technology is really a set of algorithms. So logically, it has to be software, right? But now how do I sell it? So the classic way in the 90s is I print CD-ROMs, I put it in a box, I shrink wrap, and I send it out.
Yeah.
Of course, now I don't know whether our audience know what is a
Now,
CD-ROM.
like Netflix, right? That right? It's a
Yeah,
CD-ROM, but
that's
no
right.
more CD-ROM
No more
nowadays.
already,
Yeah.
yeah. Or slightly more modern would be, okay, there's a torrent file, then you
Yeah.
download it off Steam or something, right? So those are, sometimes we call it content distribution networks, right, CDN.
Yes.
Like how do you distribute your software, right? So the model I took, and at that time, 2012, software as a service SaaS was very rare, right? Spotify hadn't launched here yet, Netflix didn't exist. We still subscribe to like HBO, all this cable TV, right? So SaaS as a model was very strange because to the user, it's like I'm paying rent to use your software, but yet I don't own the software. When I end my subscription, I don't own anything, right? So to business users, it's very unusual. To them, typical tauke lah. I buy means I have it, it's mine, right? I have the CD-ROM, I got the source code, I can touch it, you know. So SaaS was like, wow, what is this thing? It's like, is it on the cloud? Is it virtual? Am I a tenant? Like, do I go to my company name.com like that, I log in, or is it go.versafleet.co, right? So initially, there was a lot of pushback, like, hey, I am Canon, I am Philips, I pay you top dollar. Why have to log in to your URL? You know, I should go to canon.versafleet.co, right? And then we had to tell them that no, okay, this is software as a service. It's a multi-tenant, single source code stack. You are logging in just like you log in to Dropbox. So that time, luckily, Dropbox was around. Salesforce was around. So this really were the trailblazers that, literally Salesforce defined the term software as a service. Dropbox made it even more popular. Then they understood, right? So that's how we realized was the way to go to market as SaaS.
Okay. This one is a very generic question from the audience. Huh?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think you have to give your secrets away. What are the future development of your app?
Sure, yeah, no secret. Happy to share. Maybe I can talk about recent developments. So back to maybe the FairPrice example, just to have it on screen, right? We just launched this literally last week, and we just did a push live yesterday. We realized that, okay, so we had this feature where the driver can add photos and they can take pictures, right? So a lot of the transporters, the drivers, they get smart. They sometimes use pictures from last week, the day before, so they recycle pictures.
I see.
And the brands don't like it, right? Because how do I know that it's a live, real picture, or are you just WhatsApping among yourself the proof of delivery, right?
Yeah.
So we launched this feature where we restricted, like the user, FairPrice, can restrict the driver from uploading from gallery. Like it must be taken
I see.
in the app. So
I
there's
see.
a current date time stamp right there.
I see. Must build something real time into it.
Yeah.
Like the trace together, the auto swing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the thing is there to show there's not a screenshot, right?
Yeah.
So there's motion, you
Yeah.
know. So I didn't like swipe screen and show you, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very clever way. I think they won like a Design Mark award
Yeah.
recently for that.
Okay, good. Then also another question from here, very long, but basically you say you collect data for your products. I'm not sure whether you collect data, and therefore you rely a lot on data analysis. What you're trying to ask is your data processing skills stand out from your competitors? So what's your USP? What's so unique about your algorithm?
Yeah, I would say the data is, to be frank, a byproduct that we were producing. Just to give some context, right? We process more than 100 million API calls a year. That's roughly translates to about 200 API calls per second, right? So as we talk, there's like 400 new data rows coming up, right? We frankly never really thought to monetize it. It was only like maybe 5 years ago, the whole data science team became like talk of the town. To me, I'm very old school, right? That's statistics lah, okay? So data science to me is like, I do statistical analysis and then I sell you back your information, right? That's really what data science is. We are doing like early experiments. So like there was a visualization here. This visualization isn't actually useful, right, from a business point of view. Like, okay, what does this mean to me, right? So this is a very cool way to just show that, oh, this is what data can do. So this, I wouldn't say, is what differentiates us, right? What differentiates us is that we are able to optimize for any geography in Southeast Asia. And bear in mind, right, I mean, Singapore is unique, right? We have developing countries as our neighbors, right? So, for example, the same building in rural Jakarta will have a different street address a few years from now, maybe in the same year, right? So how do you now pin down where these things are, right? So we're talking about geocoding, right? So our approach is we reduce it to latitude, longitude, and then we solve as if it was on an XY plane, right? So the points are defined. This is something a lot of our rivals struggle to do. A lot of our rivals, they come from India, from America. So they have like zip codes, pin codes, they have the grid system. So address data reliability is not an issue for them. But in Southeast Asia, it's absolutely a big deal. For example, Hong Kong doesn't have postal codes, right? So how do you narrow down locations in such an environment? Right, so we have learned the hard way over the years how to optimize in Malaysia, in Philippines, in Myanmar, in Vietnam, and it's not straightforward, right? Because again, Southeast Asia is not just developing; it's made up of a lot of islands, right? It's basically a massive archipelago, right? So the computer doesn't know where the roads end, and actually there's an island. Then you actually have to switch to a boat and then move on, or that Penang has 2 bridges that go to the island. Right, so these considerations have to be taken into account when we optimize.
Okay, sounds like a very complicated answer.
I know, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about that. But okay, keep the questions coming. But let's move on to the next stage of the company, right? So it's interesting. You know, when I saw your latest news, then I suddenly saw there's a CEO, and then you upgrade yourself from CEO to Group CEO.
I know, right?
What is happening?
Okay, so the simple answer is, we created a new company called God Search, right? And in that creation, we could say absorb/acqui-hired an existing company that was closing down.
So you're big enough to jump another company.
Not quite, but we did it anyway.
Acquire. Okay.
It's a good team, lah. And
Okay.
I really I value talent, right?
Yes.
So I wasn't worried about the technology IP. I can bring it, it's fine. My team is solid, right? What they brought was this opportunity in maritime logistics, which, if you compare to land logistics, is still at least 10 years behind, right? So, you know, when you supply things to a ship, they're still using pen and paper. The boatman is just going around on a speedboat or a tongkang, you know. WhatsApp is the most, I'm told, the most modern technology stack that they have, right? So in such an environment, we figured the best way to approach that is not to sell software, because they're not even ready, right? They don't care what it says, they don't know what it is, but instead we should offer it, we should go to market as a managed logistics service. Now, because that is a fundamentally different business from software, it therefore requires its own set of resources and focus, right? So instead of running it as a department or a division, I created a new private limited with its own management team and co-founding and leaders and software engineers, and they've been running with it for the past few months. And so out of logical necessity, I had to elevate myself to the group CEO thing, but it's really because I have a couple of CEOs who are just running the individual things, and my role is to really nurture them and guide them.
So that's interesting. You started from a role of playing a programmer, then getting customer, or doing sales and marketing, then building a team, become like a manager, GM, we call it a CEO, and then after that, acquiring and become a group CEO, very strategic thinking. Where are you heading now? IPO?
Oh. A few things. So each company has different fates. So for Versafleet as enterprise software, right, we're quite fortunate to be in a good space. It's a very low churn business, right? So it's a very sticky product because it takes them a lot of effort to implement and deploy. So we are doing, actually I can't even mention some of the contracts that we're doing is like classified, the government contracts and all that. But we're doing a lot of those stuff. And what we're really looking is for strategic investors, partners to enter new markets. To like for example, SMRT, right, is a highly strategic partner. They bring literally the hardware, the vehicles, the trucks, the drivers. We bring the software, and then we go to market. We call it Transport Management as a Service, TMAAS. So that's one. For God Search in Maritime, you could see you can take the classic, venture-backed path. So yeah, we're closing our seed round there. It's been made acquisition proposal as well, so we're considering those. So yeah, different fates for each, both just as exciting.
Okay, so from a personal perspective, right? Over the so many years that you've started, grow, and all this, what do you think that you've learned of becoming entrepreneur?
Wow, so
You
many
grow
things.
old. We all know that you grow old, but what other things besides growing old?
I think, wow, okay. I guess, in the spirit of research, innovation, enterprise, right? I learned that, it might sound cliche, but at the start, right, it's about what we know, what you know, how good are you at innovating, putting things together, building product. But very quickly, it is about who you know, right? Because the what you know, even if you're one in a million, there's 1,000 people just as talented and hardworking as you, right? So who you know is actually very important, the social capital and all that. And then of course later on they say it's about who knows you, right? So that's one. Another thing is I think, so there's a saying about it takes a village to raise a child. It takes an entire ecosystem, country, international network to raise a startup, right? So like our investors come from Singapore, of course, but from India, from Nepal, around the world. We're talking to funds from Japan, from China as well. We at one period we had an office in Korea. Pangyo Valley, they call it the digital valley of Korea. So we need to be open. Just like in research, right? We collaborate across borders, right? So we have collaborators. We will share data. We will publish our materials and methods, and then we figure it out. So there's that. The third thing I would say is, as a scientist engineer guy, right, I had to very quickly learn how to be like an engineering manager. And a lot of us lean to STEM because we like tinkering with things with our hands, right? But suddenly I have to manage people.
Yeah.
And people are very different. The software is different.
Yeah.
The hardware is
So
so
from
different.
very hard one program, it will work to hello,
Yes,
can you please work harder?
Oh my god, yeah. So the soft skills,
Yes.
I'm still struggling with it, to be frank. But I learned that, we all have our operating system in our head, our values, culture, identity, prejudices, aspirations, hopes and fears. And every person is unique, and you need to understand as a leader. So now we have like almost 30 people in the team, 5 different cities, they speak different languages. We all speak English, but completely different background, upbringing, right? So to make management decisions, sometimes, we have to walk a mile in their shoes. You don't strictly have to, you can make management decisions anyway, but obviously you can make better informed decisions if you take the time to empathize with them. So that required a lot for me to
So
make
empathy,
decisions.
right?
Yes.
Empathy.
So it's
As
a
long
core
as-
value for me.
Yeah. Oh, there's a core value. Yeah. I saw empathy, clarity. You have a lot of
Curiosity.
ECA, right? Yeah.
Audacity,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's another question talking about. Very specific. When expanding into the new market, what's the biggest challenge?
Oh yeah, I can show with.
Don't talk about technology because I think they don't understand technology. No, I think they want to look at really the challenge beyond the technology. Yeah.
I can say about Indonesia, right? So it took us about 3-4 years to really get into Indonesia. Initially, I thought, okay lah, right? Because we went into Malaysia pretty fast. I mean, you drive up to KL. Most of us have family, friends on both sides of the border, so it's kind of easy-ish. And my mistake was I thought I can do that with the next country lah, Indonesia, right? So I'll take this short, like literally day trips to Jakarta, right? I'll fly in the morning, have some meetings, then I fly back at night.
Yeah.
And I kept doing that. Then one day, one of my business mentors sat me down and said like, you're wasting your time, right? You can't just be a tourist here and expect to get traction, right? You have to start planting roots here. I said, what do you mean like move here? I said, no lah, at least stay a night or 2 nights, maybe the whole week, right? Things like that. So I started doing that. I was like, okay, fine. I'll stay a couple of days, 3 days. And then I realized that, yeah, it's quite different, right? So like what we eat for breakfast is different, right? They eat bubur, porridge for breakfast. That's like our lunch, right? It's pretty heavy.
Right.
The daily commute is a completely different experience in Jakarta. And then I realized, knowing all that the way they think about price, value, transportation is in that context, right? Then I started appreciating it, and in doing that, I started making friends there who like, wow, I see that you're serious about Indonesia, okay, now let's talk.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when we met Metro Data. Metro Data is like the challenger for software. So they carry a lot of software products. Right? So everyone buys from Metro Data Indonesia. So they started carrying Versafleet in their portfolio, their sales bag. And that's when we started winning big accounts and really got in. So you really need to spend time in the market, like really immerse.
Now, after listening to you, I must come back to my favorite topic, right? Academically called design thinking.
Oh, yes.
What about the journey map, right? And actually you use it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because then everybody has to learn, right? Design thinking.
yeah,
Please,
absolutely.
is the real usage. Last question before we let you go.
Oh, sure.
Right. So now you serve CPF board. You serve in Malay Chamber of Commerce,
Yes,
right?
yes.
As a president. Why do you do so much ECA? I know it's ECA in your value system, but yeah, why?
Yeah, good question. Actually, sometimes I also ask my investors, right? Actually, do you guys mind or even like me doing this? Because it's distracting me from the business, right? Very interesting. So they say that, look, number one is value add, right? Because indirectly you're promoting Versafleet and we want you to do that, so like go for it. So to make myself feel better about it, I take leave when I go for these meetings. So I
Okay.
apply for leave. I mean, yeah, like, I know, like, I hire myself, but I will consume my annual leave, like half day meeting, half day, and so on. So I have to be fair to the team, right? Because when I'm not there reviewing their code, they need to know where I am. Yeah, so that's one. But I think more fundamentally, right, I've really been a beneficiary of our system, right? So again, if you look at this map, you see NUS there, you see NRF, SMRT, Enterprise Singapore, Seeds Capital. So these are our Singapore universities, institutes of higher learning, our stat boards, our GLCs. And if I have benefited, having benefited from all this, if I'm now called to serve, how can I straight face say no, right? So I guess I'm a sucker for it, So I've learned to start saying no sometimes. So I actually stepped down from a lot of these boards and committees actually.
So you're in a call to serve, then you will serve, right?
I will say yes first.
Yes.
And then I will look. If it gets a bit too heavy, I will nominate someone else. And
Yeah.
okay.
That's why your name get mentioned in the National Day rally.
I mean, I don't know. I might be unique in this view, right? So I have peers who just one track focus, like unicorn or nothing.
Yeah.
And full respect. And maybe that's the way to go. For me, I feel that I should not rise through the ranks, but rise with the ranks, right? If I can
Yes.
groom or nurture the next generation of leaders, CEOs, and help them benefit just as how I benefited, I think, so I don't aspire to get a world-class bungalow, that kind of stuff. That doesn't drive me, right? It's really about making a dent in the universe, making a positive impact, not just to industry, customers, users, but also to the peers, my team that follow me, right? They should benefit just as how I benefited. So that's
It's great, I think I'll end this session through this sort of message to everybody. So I was in Oxford, and we were talking about the flourishing projects that Harvard started. So what is flourishing, right? Is that you flourish, right? You not just bring joy to yourself, but to everybody around you. So a purpose-driven enterprise, right? Purpose-driven is not just really to make money, right? But also to contribute. So in that sense, when we are looking at organizational behavior theory, Maslow hierarchy of needs, and there's these things that say, at the end say this is self-actualization. That's the ultimate. But I learned there's something new. It's called calling. You have a higher calling to contribute, to not just make from the society, but also giving back to the society. So it's beyond the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Something very new theory, new framework, but I think it's amazing. All right, and I think that flourishing has be part of Shamir, and I think that's really great. And I would like to thank you for coming to our show and telling us your journey, and also reminding us that we are part of the society. We take, we give at the same time. We contribute, right? Okay, so I think that's all for the session tonight. See you in the next session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Neo.
Bye.